I'm going to be talking about Downpour, and I'm going to be talking more broadly about making creative tools. So to start, hi, I'm V. So these slides are actually made in Downpour as well, which is why there's a picture of me standing on the stage, not just now, from when I was doing tech setup earlier. So I've been in the games industry for like a decade. I've game designer, engineer, worked on lots of weird things, lots of things involving like physical things and digital things. I made a piano you can play Doom on at one point with other people. And I'm here today to talk to you about Downpour. So Downpour is an app that you can make little games in and then share them from within that. So shall we make a little game together? And I can show you what it's about, if I can get the little screen mirroring thing working here. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to need to make a first page, and then, so this is within Downpour. We've started making a game. We can now add a photo to it. And now I'm going to just run off the stage, and does anyone want to, ideally near the front, mind having their photo taken for this? I'm looking at you. Yeah. Great. Okay, so look happy. Yeah, good. Great. So we now have you in the photo. And now let's add some text underneath. Could you give me some options of things that we could do to his face? Appropriate for an audience.
Some options.
Yeah? Happy, sad, poke.
Most sad.
Sorry?
Most sad.
Most sad. Okay. So what happens, and then if we click on this, we can then say, when we tap on this button here, it goes to a new page, and now we can take another photo. Now you need to look very sad. And then one more option. Anyone else want to yell out? Other face, let's say, and I'll get someone else's face. Anyone else want to have their face in this game? Come on, you. You shook your head, which means you volunteered. Sorry, that photo is kind of bad. I'm going to take another one. There we go. Okay. So now we have a game. So we can come here. We have a face here. We can go most sad. Other face. Change this to another face. You know, like we've got all the classic video game things here. There's a choice. There's emotion. You know, that's all you really need for a video game, right? There's graphics. There's text. So now let's upload it. Call it from the stage. And now I can push this upload button, and if my Wi-Fi works, yeah! So now this is online, and it's now loading. But yeah, this is now a game that is online that you can play. Why is my Wi-Fi worse at downloading a picture than it is from uploading it? Yeah. So we've now made a game and shared it online. And obviously this is a tiny game and like a bad game, but at the same time, if on stage I can make a game and have it uploaded and have it something that I could share online in this amount of time, you can just add some more stuff to it, and you can do something in like 20 minutes, something like that, and make something that's kind of interesting. So yeah, this is Downpour. You can make games with it in this kind of way. There's obviously other features. You can play other people's games within the apps. You can change the styling. You can do blah, 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 blah. But that's the core of it. The core of it is, what if making a game is something that could take as much time as writing a tweet or making a TikTok video? And so Downpour is an example of something that category I like to call creative tools. And what do I mean by this? These are tools which allow people to be creative. They are tools which are not not like productivity tools. They are things for people who might otherwise not be creative or might otherwise be intimidated by it. They're tools that encourage you to start doing something you've not done before. They're less about trying to be a useful thing for your job and more about like, oh, something new, something you can try else. So what have I learned making these kind of tools? That's what the rest of this talk is pretty much about. We'll kind of roam over that. So the first thing I have learned is think small. The constraints of the tool will determine what people make. And this is a really generative thing. Like, it's not just that some things will be possible and other things won't be possible, but because of those constraints, people will try to push against them in various interesting ways. So as an example of this, my friend Annie Wallace likes doing this. So this is written in a little engine called Pico 8, which is this like fantasy games console. It's this whole idea of like, what if, like it's fun to make something for a real games console because it's limited and it kind of constrains you in that. So what if we invented a games console that doesn't really exist and tried to make stuff for that and made some tooling and made the whole thing kind of exist in this kind of way? And more than that, this is for the kind of tweet cart thing that people do, where you get 280 characters of code, and you're like, cool, can I make something within this? And so within this, the code you can see on the right-hand side produces this little spinning GIF of a playing card spinning around, and there's different things on each side. And that code is enough to draw the whole thing. And I think the important thing here is the order of events here. Like, the thing that happened was not Andy was like, I really want to make an image of a playing card spinning around, and this is the way that I'm choosing to go about it. Instead, it was, I'm enjoying messing around with Pico 8. I've been enjoying doing these little tweet cart experiments. I think I could do something where something's spinning around and there's something on it, and that's the thing that led him to making a playing card spinning around. It's not starting from the end result, it's starting from this is a fun thing to mess around with. I wonder what I can do with it. And, it's like I've got limited space, I've got limited tools, I wonder if I can do something that does more than you would expect within that. Like, a limit is also a challenge, and that challenge then can spur you to be making interesting things. So Downpour, as I've shown it to you, it doesn't have any kind of internal state. It doesn't have any tracking your choices later on or any of that kind of thing. If you want to have a bunch of branching possibilities, you've got to just code in a bunch of branching possibilities kind of fairly straightforwardly. So bearing that in mind, I would like to show you a game that my friend Mike made. Yes. So I'm going to divide you up. We're going to play tic-tac-toe. Do people know this? Noughts and crosses? Okay, so everyone on the left-hand side, you're player 1. Everyone on the right-hand side, you're player 2. And yell out which move you want to make, and I'll click on the first one I hear. Okay, so player 1 goes first. Where do you want to go? Center. Yeah. Okay. So your noughts, top right. Okay. Player 1. Bottom center. Top center. Okay. I think we're at a draw here. Player 1. Bottom right? Yeah, bottom right is a better choice, I think. Player 1 could still win it if player 2 is an idiot. Where do you want to go? Bottom left. Are you sure? It seems like a bad choice to me. Here? Left? The other way. Player 2? Yeah, I think we're now at a draw. So yeah, a tied game. Okay, so the thing to bear in mind is that, again, Downpour doesn't have any branching, state tracking, any of that kind of stuff, and yet we could play noughts and crosses. And the question kind of is like, how is this made? I need to go back to my slides to And the answer is that he just generated all of the different possible states that a tic-tac-toe board could be in, which is about 5,500, and he generated an image for each one of those states. And yeah, like the code thing is about 18 megabytes of text, which I can just kind of scroll down just to give you a sense of it. So yeah, he used some just code generation to make all of these options and to make them link together. Like, I'm really impressed by text editors, though. Like 18 megabytes of text, and it just runs fine. Yeah, so you can see here's just all the boards at the bottom here. And this is a really cool thing, I think. And I think it's noticeable, again, like Mike would not have made this if making tic-tac-toe wasn't a thing that seemed like it was going to be impossible, and then he wanted to prove that it could be wrong. This is the first Downpour game that he made, right? He opened it up, he messed around with it, and he was like, yeah, the first thing I do is going to be the thing that is impossible. So I'd like you to bear that in mind as we now play this second game. Okay, so I think now we're playing as the AI, so we're all, yes, we want to play a game of chess? Great. We play white and go first. Which kind of piece do we want to move first? Pawn or the knight? Pawn, great. Which one? You can yell out the number, the letter rather. D? Okay. 1 square or 2? 2 squares, okay. Okay then. Respond with horse. Wow, this is exciting. And this is also the thing, right? Like, also Downpour is great for making jokes, and a thing about having this kind of limitation is you can make some great jokes. I'm so pleased with this game, it just absolutely tickles me. Anyway, yeah, so this brings us on to the next lesson from making creative tools, which is people find their own use for tools. People are tool-using animals. Like, we're really good at it, and we're really good at being in a situation, seeing a thing, and using the things that are around us to accomplish our tasks, even if those things are not designed for it. You know, we were evolved to pick up sticks and use the sticks to poke other people with, or fetch ants out of anthills. You know, the sticks are not there for that reason. We're here to solve problems in, creative ways. That's how people work. And let me give you some examples of this that I've kind of collected. So maybe you want to cut your own hair, you like doing a nice clippering, you're trying to do a nice kind of clip of the back of your head. If anyone's ever done this, I've done this. It's quite hard to see what you're doing because your eyes are at the front of your head, and the back of your head is not where your eyes are. And even if you were, so you've kind of got it's kind of awkward, but what if you happen to have a camera and a TV around, and you can hook up the camera in order to show the image from, hook up the TV to show the image from the camera. Like, that's how you can solve your problem, you know? People are good at using tools, they've got these things around, that's how you can solve your problem. Or, say you're building a garage extension for your house, and you're building it yourself, and you've got a good grasp of the principles of it, but you need to figure out some of the dimensions, you need to figure out how many bricks to order and stuff like that, but you're not really an architect, you don't really know how to use architect tools, but the thing you do know how to use is Excel. So you can use Excel to figure out the answers to these questions. You're a tool-using animal, you can use the tools that are around you to solve your problems. Or a final example, say you want to stop your computer from going to sleep. There's some software you can install on this. I've got a thing on here called Caffeine or whatever. But say you're using a work computer and you're not allowed to install your own stuff on there, and so, how do you solve this? You could do it manually, it's kind of annoying. Or maybe you can just use your watch. And it just jiggles the mouse cursor, and that will work. You can use the things that are around you to solve your own problems. And as somebody who builds these tools, you should think about that. You should think about people are going to use your tools in ways that you didn't originally intend for it. People find their own use for tools. So you should think about, how can I make my tools something that can be used for things that I didn't initially intend? How can I let them be used in ways that can kind of be extended on? And so really, I guess what I'm saying here is be like Lego. Like Lego is a great example of this, right? Like Lego bricks can connect to any other Lego brick. There's a whole modular system of things where they can connect together to make shapes that the people at Lego off in Denmark did not originally intend, because they've made it as a modular system so all the parts can fit together. And similarly, you should try to make your tools so that all the parts can fit together in various different ways, even if they're not originally intended to, even if that's not the use that you're thinking of it, there's still lots of different combinations there. Or the other way of looking at this is also like, it's not just about the tool being able to connect to lots of other parts of the same tool, but also, can you make your tool so that it can connect to other things? So for example, Minecraft has this huge mod scene. I think maybe it's the most modded game out there, including a load of stuff that kind of connects to external stuff. So you can use a 3D editing tool in order to make 3D models, and then you can import in these 3D models and turn them into bricks within Minecraft. So you can build arbitrary shapes in Minecraft using these tools. Like these two different types of Legos can be connected together, and they've built the tools to allow these things to connect. And so these things can do more. You can use the power of one thing to apply to a different thing. So Downpour connects to other tools. The games it makes can be played in the browser, as we've seen, and the browser is everywhere, right? Like the web is kind of everywhere. It can connect to lots of things. You can push an export button and download the game itself as an HTML file and as a big JSON file. And you can then modify that using a text editor, using whatever other tools that you've got that can do something to JSON, and then re-import it and you edit it within the browser. So you can use any of your normal programming tools to generate these games if you want to, because it's built in this kind of standard way and because it's been designed in such a way that like the source for it is not super obfuscated. And like this is totally something also I ripped off from Bitsy, like which is this other kind of very accessible creation tool. Like Bitsy has this amazing community of Bitsy hacks, of people saying, you can build this game in Bitsy and then you can add this random other functionality. You can suddenly make your games 3D, you can add sound, you can add all of these kind of different changes to it that can extend out from this basic thing. And that's how Mike was able to make tic-tac-toe work, because he had his existing thing there. Okay, so next lesson, which is, what is the actual biggest problem in the little area you're trying to solve? When you're thinking about trying to help people with the problem of like, help people make games, it's worth thinking about like, what is the actual bits of making a game that are difficult? Like, there's making the game itself, like sitting down and making something playable. There's telling people about it. There's like letting people get access to it and play it. We've covered some parts of this, the kind of constraints, breeding creativity, but the tool exists within a larger context and a larger system, and you don't necessarily need to solve all of the parts of the problem, but you should think about it and think about how the thing you're building fits in within that. So yeah, as an example, here's a different creative tool I made in the past. It's called Cheatbots Done Quick. It helped people make Twitter bots back when Twitter existed and before it, stopped existing and became a hostile wasteland. And making Twitter bots was this like fun, creative scene. People liked doing this. But people who were poets, for example, would not want to make Twitter bots. They found it hostile and annoying and off-putting. And the hard parts of making Twitter bots were like writing the code that actually generated the tweets. That's kind of hard. You've got to have some programming skill for that. You've got to figure out what it is. If you're a programmer, then maybe that's kind of easier, like the kind of technical side of that. But also this is kind of the core creative, this is the bit that's fun. So there's not so much you can do to try to make that easier because you want to leave all that kind of expressive power there. But actually, that wasn't the hardest part of making a Twitter bot. Other bits you've got is just like, you've generated the tweets, but also you need to connect to Twitter and get it to post it and use the developer API to do that. And there's the libraries for various programming languages, but then you've got to figure out how to use that library and how to install it and all of that shit. And also, if you've got a Twitter bot running, in order for it to run, you need to have your server online. And the way a Twitter bot works is it sits on a server, and every 6 hours or so, it runs a bit of code that posts a tweet that is generated. So trying to keep a server up and trying to keep it generate feels like it's a tricky thing. And so Gbots kind of tried to address all of these problems, right? It was set up on my developer account, so you didn't have to create your own or know what OAuth was. It ran on its own server, so you didn't have to keep a server up. Instead, I would handle that. And running the actual, generating the actual stuff, there's a language called Tracery that it used, which helped you generate stuff in a kind of controlled way. And so it also helped with that. So it helped you make Twitter bots, and I think it was pretty successful as a tool. Lots of people used it. But the big problems it solved was not the making the Twitter bots, but rather the running them, and it was kind of solving that whole problem. So yeah, going back to where is the biggest problem? For Downpour, we're making a tool to let people make games. We're making a tool to let people make games, and it's also hosting it so other people can play it, about showing people the game, so you can have featured games within it that are promoted in there. And on the other side of it, another problem that people face when they're starting out, they press the new game button and they're faced with the blank page syndrome. You've got this big blank sheet of paper, and it's like, what do you want to make with it? And it's really intimidating to start from a big blank sheet of paper and decide what to go in there. It puts the pressure on the user to come up with the idea. It's much better to start off with something simple that they can change. So when you first open Downpour, the library has a few sample games that are already there, and you can open up them and modify them. And I think the simplest and the best one of those is this little game called What's Inside the Egg? So this is kind of really simple. All it is this egg, and you can click on the egg, and you click on the egg, and then it says, add a picture here. And lots of people have made their own variations of this, because it turns out that most things that emerge unexpectedly from an egg turn out to be funny. So lots of dogs and cats emerging from the eggs, people's faces, pretty much any object. Yeah, just try having something emerge from an egg. Yeah, and so what this does is it gives you a couple of things. It means that they can make their first game without having to think of what's the first thing I'm going to make. You can just open it and change some stuff around. It means that you can poke around at it and see how a game works. You don't have to make the thing. You can just look at it and kind of see how the logic plays around. How is it structured? What does it look like when there's multiple games? And it means you've got a working example. All you need to do is add an image, and you've made a game. And that gives you the confidence of oh yeah, I've already made a game. I already believe I can do this, which means that if I'm making a game again, I'm not just going from the, oh, can I do this? Does this work? But instead you're going from the, oh yeah, I can do this. I just need to do it more. And this is especially important if you're making a creative tool that's pitched at people who haven't got a ton of experience making this kind of thing already. A big obstacle that people face and a big problem that you're trying to solve for this is oh, I couldn't do that. They don't think they're the right kind of person. They doubt themselves, they compare themselves to experts, they get discouraged. So what can you do to try to solve this problem? First, as we kind of discussed, give them some early wins. Give them some stuff where they can mess around with it and they have already succeeded. Once they've already felt like they can succeed, that it's easier for them to just do it again. But another thing you can do is also think about the aesthetics of the thing you're making. And I personally I've shown you both of these things already, but I personally like making things that are kind of pastel colors. And it's because I like making stuff where there's a bunch of kind of technical assumptions that you'd start with, but it ultimately tries to remove those technical things. And so I'm trying to signal to people, if you don't think about yourself as technical, then this is also for you. You know? So here's an example of things I've not made. These are two musical creation tools. The one on the left is called Orca. It's a sequencer thing where all of the different symbols you enter can kind of generate stuff, and it's like a kind of obscure programming language, basically. And the thing on the right is called Imitone, and this is a program where you sing to it and it generates MIDI notes from your singing. It figures out what note you're singing and then processes that and does that at kind of super low latency. So actually, in terms of technical complexity, they're pretty much equal, but if you're somebody who is intimidated by technical things, the thing on the right is going to seem probably way friendlier to you. It's got colors, it's got icons, it tries to be soft and appealing. And the thing on the left is arcane and technical and makes you feel like a hacker. And this is also not like a fundamental thing of one thing is good and one thing is bad. Speaking for myself, I am a programmer. I like feeling like a hacker. I do not necessarily feel especially musically confident. So the idea of, oh, you can make some music by programming in an obscure programming language is oh yeah, cool. I've programmed in obscure programming languages. That sounds like a fun thing, and I'll make some music along the way. Okay, yeah, this is a good way to get in. But oh yeah, you can come up with some tunes by singing them. I'm ooh, that sounds a bit scary. So yeah, it's how you're trying to signal to your audience through the aesthetics that you've got. And on to the next lesson. Another thing that you should try to do when you're making creative tools is to be a cockroach. Be a cockroach. And this is kind of a reference to the whole myth about how cockroaches can survive a nuclear winter. I don't know if that's true. Luckily, we've not had a nuclear winter to test it, but what I mean by this is you should try to make your tools so that they can survive in hostile conditions. You should try to make them so that bad things happen, they can get neglected, and they will still be around. What does this look like? Maybe it's just coding it in such a way that it's less likely to break, having a sense of oh, this library is not going to change very much versus, oh, this thing is super productive, but it's likely that they change the way it works 6 months' time. If you're making this on a small scale, then think about how much resources you have, and are you going to be paying attention to it in a couple of years? Is it going to just stop working at that point, or have you built it to kind of last in this kind of way? Maybe it means just trying not to have bits that are online. Downpour is built it has an online bit, but if the server goes down, the app still works. You can still make games with it. It's been deliberately designed that way so that it will still be useful even if I stop keeping the servers up, stuff crashes, it's still going to work, And it not having an offline part means people can pirate it. It can exist as a little file that gets copied around. Even if the main website goes offline, even if all of this kind of stuff happens, it can still survive. And similarly, open source can be great for this. And there's kind of multiple ways of doing open source. There's the proper way to do open source, like kind of Godot does, where there's a proper community and the whole thing is developed. It's part of that community and you can contribute to it. And then there's also the bad kind of open source, which is just you dump your code online somewhere and it's technically open source, but there's very little support for it. And what I can say is the bad sort of open source is also great. Cheatbots exists on a GitHub repo. I dumped it up there because there was no reason not to have it open source. And actually, Twitter died and Cheatbots didn't. I mean, Cheatbots did, but people took the code from it and they built versions of it for Mastodon and for Blue Sky, and those ones are still running now. It's really the perfect outcome because the thing I built still exists and is still being used by people, and I no longer have to keep the server up. Really, it's a dream scenario. And that just happens because I happened to dump the code up on GitHub, and so people could see how it worked, and they could poke at that, and they could adapt it for their own uses. I'm honestly very grateful I did that. And all of this still kind of applies even if you have more money, even if you're not working at a kind of solo dev kind of way. Like, if you're a startup with a lot of investment cash, what happens when that money runs out and you will run off and do something else? If you're a huge company, what happens when the project gets cancelled? Is there still something that can exist in the world that people can use ahead of time? Yeah, be a cockroach. Be a cockroach, but also have fun. It's important to remember that it's a creative tool. And it's fine, it's even great to try to be creative when you're making it. The things I'm talking about are not just things that people spend all day in doing their jobs, you know? Unity or Godot or anything like that, it's designed to be appealing to anyone. It doesn't want to be weird and off-putting and like make weird choices that some people like and some people will hate. It wants to be a thing that people can use in their jobs, and it is a thing that can apply to lots of different situations and it can apply to lots of different people, but you don't have to work in that way, and that's not necessarily the best way to make kind of creative tools. You want to inspire them to be doing something creative. They want to inspire them to be friendly and approachable, and a way to be friendly and approachable is just to express your personality, have a sense of joy within this. So when I made Downpour, I was thinking about usability and how to add editing tools that worked well on a phone, you know, tiny screen but complicated UI. And I was like thinking, how can you use it one-handed? But I was also thinking about this pencil case. I'm just going to let you look at that pencil case whilst I get myself some water. Yeah, this pencil case, which... have you got some water that's open? I can't manage to. Thanks. So yeah, this pencil case, which I don't think I ever had when I was at school, but some people at school definitely had this. And I remember going like, wow, this is super cool. You know, when I was like 7 or whatever. Like it's got various buttons that make various bits like pop open and slide out. Like there's a little calculator that pops out and a little pencil sharpener that pops up and a secret drawer that you could put, I guess, a rubber in. Tiny little drawer. I don't know. But definitely when you look at that, you can kind of see the inspiration for Downpour. It's got clicky little bits and things that slide up. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I want to make something creative and I want to make something clicky and I want to make something that it's fun to push the buttons on. And that looks like its own thing. It doesn't just look kind of like generic, useful software. So I want to have the buttons be clicky and I want to have the, yeah. But honestly, Downpour isn't even the best example of this. For a really good example, you should see Electric Zine Maker, which is made by Nathalie Lawhead. Like, this shit is just find this so inspiring. And like, really are like, oh yeah, I could be going way harder if I tried. Like looking at this, like, you know, like the kind of funky corners to the different like tools there, the dripping paint on the like backside there, like the fact it's an alarm clock, like there's a skull. What does the skull do? I don't know. Click on it, find out. This thing, you know, like, here's your like kind of menu where you're choosing things from, like, oh, do you want to have the fold lines? Sure. Do you want to have a potato that tells you an encouraging message? Yes, absolutely, I want a potato to tell me an encouraging message. That's absolutely what I want from my productivity tools. Another thing, do you want to select this tool from Photoshop, or do you want to enter the smoosh zone? I want to enter the smoosh zone, right? Why not enter the smoosh zone? Why not have all of this stuff? It encourages you to explore the whole thing and see what happens when you push on buttons and mess around with it. And clicking on buttons and messing around and seeing what it does, that's how you get into it. That's how you discover a new thing. That's how you mess around and discover a cool effect that you weren't thinking of but actually could be really cool. And then that gives you an idea for a new thing to make. It's full of that kind of joy. And for me, that joy is really communicated to me. And this means that the tool is like, this isn't just like pointless complication. It means that the tool works better because it is full of this weird, you know, creative choices. Delight is the thing that you want people to be creating, and you can create that for them. So finally, this is the big bit at the end where I tell you, yes, you should do it. Come on, big inspirational bit. Stop making video games, doing whatever it is you're doing with your life. Come and make creative tools. Come join me with this. But, if you want to, you don't have to. There's lots of other things you can do. But seriously about this, I make creative tools because I care about people making interesting things, and I think that video games and little interactive art forms are important and powerful. And I don't just want to make a cool video game. I want to make video games cooler. I want to look at the kind of larger systems and how this stuff works, and I want to have an impact on those larger systems, not just on making a single individual cool thing. And I also have the right set of skills for making these kind of tools. I can write code, I can design interfaces, I can think through these kind of systems. I'm happy enough working by myself. But honestly, if you have a different set of skills and inclinations, you could have just a bigger impact on video games by making a really cool game that inspires a bunch of people to make something kind of similar, or writing a book that teaches people about this, or teaching, or organizing events like this which show people some cool stuff, or show people some cool games that they wouldn't have seen otherwise, or inspire them to make something cool. You could lobby the government for more funding. You could work for a publisher. There's all of these things that you could do that could have this impact on video games in this kind of systemic way, and just as big an impact as Downpour could. But for me, I think about the game creation tool Twine, and it's this little tool that you can use to make hypertext stories that can go on the web, and I think about all the games that people made with it, games like Rat Chaos and For Those We Love Alive, and all the people who made those games, people who often didn't have that much money and kind of sat outside of the traditional video game system, and they made these games, and there was this real surge of creativity coming around as all these people, quite often kind of queer, made these games, and they put them online, and there was a whole movement. And that whole movement then shifted what things people spoke about in kind of larger games. They shifted what the culture of video games was. And seeing the change that happened from that surge of creativity, and seeing how that surge of creativity was enabled by a tool existing that previously didn't exist that let them make those things, I'm like, just wow, that's really cool. I want to, if I can, do something similar. And that's why I made Downpour. So you can make creative tools, you can do something else, but personally for me, this is a way to have an impact that doesn't involve sending as many emails as a bunch of those other options. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.